So we're in the winter time. We're in the winter season, and it can be a really nice time to emphasize or look after your grounding. Typically, in the winter, it's a really nice time for us to like think about what it's like, how it is to be grounded. It's also obviously a time, it's like the most inward time of the year. So it's a natural time to kind of be hibernating. Okay, bears, animals, some animals are hibernating during this time. And there's a quality of like resting, like gathering, conserving, like a drawing inward in the winter time. If you think about us, like as human beings, we didn't have electricity way back, right? So before we started having electricity, chances are we would be going to sleep and waking up like with the sun. So it's kind of like there's a natural rhythm to things. And I think it's helpful to keep that in mind, that we are nature. Like that's us. We're very closely connected to nature. We are nature. We are all of this. So like really just tuning into that and really like following suit can be a nice thing to do always, but in the winter especially. So like when we're thinking about just this overall sense of like an inwardness, like a drawing inside, a inner focused awareness, obviously meditation can be a very nice thing to do in the winter. It's something that really comes pretty natural for people. It's like everything is doing that around us. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to do that too. It can seem more effortless often in the winter time, like our practice, our meditation. So if you find yourself like being drawn or called to like, meditate a little bit more, or get your practice going in a gentle way in the wintertime, that's not an uncommon thread that people have. You can ride that wave of the season in a way. You can like ride that energy, like let go into it. Obviously, like sleeping more can be really nourishing for people in the wintertime, that kind of hibernation quality. It's a wonderful time to like nourish and kind of build up your energy, kind of allowing things to build. A nice chance to like recharge your batteries. I have a teacher who used to say that like this period of time, he would often talk about like between December 15th and January 15th, but also 15 days before that and after was part of it. But he would talk about like during that period of time around the turn of the year is a really nice chance, if you can remember to do it, to just rest a little bit more, to really think of that period of time on each end of the new year. It sets the stage for the entire year to come for a lot of people. If you really are able to like maybe not start a whole bunch of new projects during that time, if you're able to kind of let things fall away a little bit and just really rest more or be more inward during that period of time, it really sets the stage for like a positive, a grounded, a balanced new year that you're heading into. And on the other hand, it also can, if you do like exhaust yourself, if we do kind of get drained and sapped, like around that period of time, that can follow us as well into the new year. So it's an interesting thing. I've definitely found it to be true for me. There have been some years when I've been extremely busy. I've overdone it over that period of time, and I've definitely felt it for quite some time. And there have been times when I've really had an awareness around like recharging my batteries, allowing things to fill, to recharge, and you feel really good moving into the new year. Sometimes I think about it in terms of like trimming the tree of my life, I guess. If you think about like a bonsai tree, those little kind of bonsai trees that they have in Japan. And I think there's even a Eugene Bonsai Society, I believe. These little kind of landscapes, these miniature trees that like so much care and attention goes into, and they're like a landscape. It's amazing. I sometimes I think about like my life in that way, and around this period of time in the middle of the winter, it's like, oh, okay, how can I like trim things down a little bit or thin things out? It's like I may need to like trim off this branch. If I've got a whole bunch of branches going on, I might need to shorten a branch or two, trim things up. There's something about like creating some space in your life where you can just, it can just be open space. Like you can relax more, like just more potential space, openness in your life. That I find that can be really nourishing in the winter too. And you can obviously, we can always think about different foods that are nourishing in the winter time. Typically a sense of like, yeah, just whatever's nourishing for you. It really kind of helps to nourish your body, to nourish your mind. That can be helpful as well. So in the Zen tradition, we've got also, so we've got like our like formal meditation practice that we've got going on, kind of like sitting, meditating. Maybe you're doing that for like 25 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, a few minutes a day. There's this kind of sense of like our seated meditation practice. And then we also have like this quality of practice, this like Zen yoga practice, very much tuned into like the body and the energy in the body and movement practices. So this is the time of year, like in our Zen yoga practice, where we're really looking after the kidneys. The kidney energy system, for whatever reason, is seen as being really closely tied to the winter time. Kidneys are very associated like with our energy. Sometimes they're called our battery packs, actually, in the kind of the low back, the mid back. So it's interesting. Yeah, just like having both of these dimensions going on in some way can be helpful. Often there are certain, there are some places, there's this sense of like, okay, you just meditate. There's, your practice is all about sitting, meditating. And then there are certain places it's only movement. There's no sitting. And I think that the balance of the two, like really seeing, because the movement work really helps things to to free up, to open, to flow. And that really nourishes the sitting dimension of things. So having kind of some awareness of the movement side in this time of year can be really helpful, I think. There's a nice book out on kind of like, so Zen, the Zen tradition really sees human beings as like beings of energy. Like we're beings that are made of energy, like energy is flowing through us. Or sometimes they use the term like beings of vitality. So we are beings of vitality. And like tuning into that more and more, like in our meditation practice, in our movement practice, that can be really powerful for people to begin to kind of let go into that flow that we are, that's constantly happening through us moment to moment. So there's a nice book. It's called The Spark in the Machine. Not sure, maybe you've come across it. It's by an acupuncturist out in Europe, I think in the UK. And it's a really nice book because he's kind of drawing parallels between the Western medical system and acupuncture, like the East Asian Chinese medical system. He said the subtitle on the book is How the Science of Acupuncture Explains the Mysteries of Western Medicine. Usually you would see those slipped, right? How the mysteries of acupuncture explain the science of Western medicine. But yeah, he kind of goes through and he talks about the different organ systems and like the elements. And it's an interesting book. He talks about the kidneys, and in the winter time, in Chinese medicine, they not only store the life force energy, they also, he uses the word dominate the water element. They control the bones, they fill the marrow, and are responsible for creating the brain and the spinal cord, which are considered to be bones in this system filled with a certain kind of marrow. The kidneys are also seen as driving your willpower and are the seat of fear within the body, helping us to manage risk appropriately. So he kind of goes on, but yeah, the sense of like the water element in the winter time. So obviously we are the elements, we're all of the elements. But again, like in the winter time, in these different seasons of the year, certain elements or certain energies come into the foreground more. So if we think about this water element side of things, there's a well-known Zen master from a few hundred years ago named Hakuin. And Hakuin, he used to talk about how he talked about this water quality to our practice, this flowing quality. He used to talk about how he has a poem called the Zazen Wasan, the Song of Meditation. It's called the Song of Meditation. And he talks about how Buddhas, like an awakened being or like a liberated being, Buddhas are like water. And then he says ordinary beings are like ice. Okay? So it's the same essence, if you think about it. You know, they're both water, just in different forms, right? Flowing water versus kind of like an ice quality, like a frozen quality, like a block there. And our meditation practice, the thing about it is that it helps us as we're sitting, like right now, maybe you're sitting, you're being present, maybe you're being with your breathing down in your belly, just letting things flow, letting things unfold moment to moment. And maybe like when we're sitting in our practice, like what happens is something that feels pretty blocky happens for us, something that feels pretty solid, like comes to the foreground. Like maybe we start to feel like some solidity or like some kind of like a fixedness, like in our right rib cage area. So it's like things are flowing, but then actually this feels pretty not flowing. So at that point, what he's talking about, our awareness can actually function in the same way that sunlight melts ice. So when maybe that seeming solidity happens in my right rib cage area, like I can just be there right in the middle of that. Like my attention, my presence, like that, there's a sunlight quality to it. I'm not trying to change that. Like I'm just being with the right rib cage area and just how it feels. And there's something about that quality of your presence that allows it to just be and do and unfold exactly how it needs to. We're not trying to control it. We're not trying to fix it. There's just a sense of being with it completely as it is that has there's a mysterious element to that. And so what we find is we do that as it happens, and we begin these icy areas, these ice cubey areas, they begin to flow. Things begin to open, they begin to change. They kind of become that stream of the universe that we are. And that happens for us. So we become more and more as time goes on, and we get used to just being with the frozen bits that pop up. We become more and more like the kind of flowing water that Hakuin is talking about in his poem. And it's not all that difficult to do, to be there and to see ourselves in that way and to let that flow happen through us and as us. Yeah, so just another thing or two here, just like about the winter and about this energetic dimension to things in the temple, in like Zen monasteries, like in Japan or anywhere. Yeah, there's a sense of like lying low more in the winter. Again, that quality of conserving, resting more, filling your reservoir, like allowing energy to gather and fill so you kind of set yourself up for the year ahead. And because when we do that, we're blending with nature, that inward quality. It takes us back to the source as well. It's a wonderful way of bringing us back to the truth of this moment, bringing us back to the source. I love the image in Mark's book on Zen and the art of dealing with difficult people. He talks about, like, if you think of a mountain range and there's clouds just below the peaks. And like if we're looking above the clouds, you see these different peaks and they seem separate, right? They seem like there's a mountain over here, there's a peak over there, something here poking out. And it's like if we stay there long enough with that and the weather begins to change, the clouds begin to shift and they fall away. Eventually, we see like that those are valleys there. The whole mountain range is one thing. It's all connected. All of the peaks are part of the same thing. So that source, that like unity that's always here, and that's what we are, as well as what the mountain peaks are. It's like, it's a wonderful time to kind of allow that awareness to come more and more into focus for us. It's a very natural, quiet time where those kinds of insights and realizations can happen fairly easy for people. Sometimes in the dead of summer, where there's so much activity, so much kind of distraction, it can be harder to kind of to see that. at times. But winter is like the perfect time for it. So, yeah. Last thing, just about the energy is so Zen talks about the hara. Okay, the Zen tradition is big on what's called the hara. Okay, it's the belly. It's the belly area. This is your energy reservoir. So energy follows the mind. So when you're sitting in your meditation practice, if you can just put your attention right in the middle of your hara, the epicenter of the hara is what's called the tanden. Okay, it's a few fingers width below your belly button at the center line of your body. It's like the epicenter of the earthquake, right? The epicenter of your hara is right in the middle there. So if you can be there, like put your being, your presence there during the meditation periods, things will begin to gather. Energy will begin to collect here. And it's just the way things are. So during your meditation time, that things can really build if you just keep coming back and staying here the best you can. And you can also think about carrying that awareness of your hara into your daily life as well. When you're walking down the street, when you're driving, if you can like be in the hara, things really begin to build. And that kind of strength that they talk about in Zen can really begin to come alive for you. And this is, again, a perfect time to do that kind of work. So just finish up with a poem or two. This is he's not a Zen figure, but he was in the Tendai school in Japan. It's another Buddhist stream. The monk Enku, he used to wander around Japan and he would meditate in different caves and in the mountains. And he would carve these Buddha statues out of wood. And he had a vow that he was going to carve 120,000 Buddha statues, which he actually fulfilled that vow. Okay. So I went around with the photographer and we went to like different museums here, but Daizan, a friend of ours, he translated some poetry and the poetry kind of goes with the pictures. So here's one. In Hida country, the first snow's falling, like blossoms in my heart. I feel spring. So the snows are falling, but that kind of aliveness of spring is going on for him. Next one, Matsushima Bay, a water offering bowl holding millions of jewels. So he's looking at the bay. Can you imagine looking out at Fern Ridge and seeing every water droplet as like a jewel? Or like going out to the coast in the ocean, like every water droplet is seen as like a jewel. Sounds pretty nice. And then the last one, eyes closed. You don't see the moon everywhere, always shining in your heart though. Don't you see? So those are a couple.